So thank you for joining my channel. Hope everybody's doing well. I just put a video on my Instagram. I'm going to put the link below for you as well. But it's on the topic of the best way to try to break through the job market. And I gave you 3 tips on the best way to go about doing that. Largely, especially if you're older like myself and you understand that the job market now, with businesses looking to cut costs, sometimes it's not about the experience you have, but namely, you might lose out on the job just because somebody just graduated from college. They're a little bit younger, and the company is largely looking at the fact that they could pay them less than they pay you based on your experience and your skills. So I urge you, just check out that video. It's real quick, 3 minutes or less, just 3 tips you can utilize. But with this video, I saw an interesting article that I want to share with you guys, and it's in the same vein as far as obtaining a job. But what it's largely speaking to is how to land an interview. But as I interpret it, it's more about 3 things you should consider before you apply to that company. And I think it could help you not only realize your value, but help you get into the right mindset. So when you do get that interview, you approach the interview in the right way. And it helps not only to mitigate some of that anxiety that we all have, but just help you speak to what you have to offer and what you can contribute to that company in the best way possible, I think. An article was written by Claire Hughes Johnson. And, it says that a lot of people think that getting the job is primarily a matter of having the right education, the right resume, and the right job skills, which is primarily true because that does help get you the interview. But as far as getting the job, Warren Buffett says like character and energy is what rounds you out and helps you actually get the job. But Claire Hughes points to one thing in particular herself as the ex-VP of Google that she largely looked for. And there were certain things that she could point out to see that, okay, this person is on the ball. And what she largely says is your self-awareness, right? Your self-awareness. And that points to a lot about not only what you can bring to the table, but what your temperament is, how you come off, how people accept you, and really what kind of atmosphere you create when you walk into the room. So the first one she goes on to is, she says it's important to know your value, right? And she breaks this down. Important to know your value, right? And in knowing your value, there's 3 criteria that comes into mind to where you could analyze what really is my value. Because a lot of us have an idea of what our value is, but then it's different from what we can conjure in our mind. And then when we actually go out there into the real world and we see what our value is. So she says, know your value. So the first criteria is knowing what's important to you, right? So if I ask you right now, what's important to you at a job? You'd probably say, oh, pay, the people I work with, the type of work. But then you go into the job, you go into the job that you largely accepted because you needed a job. It was less than ideally what you wanted to accept as a form of payment. You hate the people at your job and you hate what you do. So before you apply to that company, I want you to really think about what's important to you, right? Is it the people you work with? Can you work with people that you don't necessarily get along with, but are professional? Or do you want people who are more like family and you want to come every day and it feel like one big kumbaya? Is pay that important to you? Can you substitute high payment for low enjoyment? In other words, can you put up with a job that pays you a lot of money for work that you really don't enjoy? Or is it the vice versa? Can you put up with a low paying job doing something that you really enjoy? Right? So it's knowing what's important to you, consider that, and then taking some real life situations and really analyzing them and seeing what's really important to me. 2 criteria: what gives you energy, right? Closely related to what's important to you. But a lot of us sometimes don't know what gives us energy. A real frequent term I hear right now is introvert. You know, are you extrovert? Are you an introvert? Truth of the matter is, I think all of us are some kind of substitute. I forget the term, but I think all of us are some kind of substitute of both. You know, we have our moments where we want to be the life of the party, or we want to just talk our heads off, or we want somebody talk our heads off to us. And we got moments where, you know, we just want to be alone, gazing at the stars, looking at the sun, etc., etc. So nobody's just a black and white. Sometimes somebody just really wants to be alone all the time. And sometimes people know themselves and I cannot be by myself. I need to be around people. But what gives you energy? Is it the people at work? Is it the type of work that you do? Is it the environment? Are you looking for a particular environment when you go to work that really just energizes you and, oh, I can't wait to go back to work the next day? What is it that gives you energy? Really consider that. And the 3rd criteria is what weakens you, or what weakens your energy? What takes away from your persona, right? You know, sometimes when you run into somebody and 9 times out of 10, hey, how you doing? Yeah, oh no. And then that one time they're like, yeah, man, I'm good. Yeah, Monday. Or even Friday. Yeah, Friday. Yeah. All right, I'll see you later. It's like, yo, what happened to them? Like, what's wrong with you? You know, it's important to not only know what energizes you, but know what weakens you. If you go to work and you love what you do and you love what you're getting paid, but you have this one coworker that just, for some reason, just poops all over your oatmeal, man, first thing in the morning, and for the rest of your day, you have a real messed up day, then it's important that you take that person, you put them in context why they irritate you so much, and then you keep them at a distance. You know, you probably have to work with them in some capacity, but you keep it very short, very professional, very concise, and then you move on to the people who you rather associate with. So knowing what's important to you overall, knowing what gives you energy or what strengthens you, and then knowing what weakens you. It's important that you know your value. Even before you apply or look to apply for that job, the type of company that you apply to is most important. Okay? So number 2, she goes on to say, know your work style. So what she says is spend a few weeks writing down the moments when you feel like you're reaching new heights at your job or you're hitting new lows. One of my favorite things whenever I start a new job is, I'd say about a couple months in, maybe a month, a couple months in, depending on the atmosphere, depending on how fast things are moving at the business. But it's usually around that time where I've done enough observation. I've analyzed all the workflows I can. I've collaborated with all the necessary stakeholders or the people who are involved in whatever aspect of the business I'm involved in. So I have pretty much everything laid out on the table as far as who does what, where goes what, and in what timely manner needs to be done. Then that's where I could start putting my own knowledge and expertise as far as how do I improve this process, or what can be removed from this process to make it more efficient, or just how can this process be made more efficient overall? Like, what needs to be done to make what takes 5 days now happen in 2 days? Is it possible? Is it a possibility? Because if it is, let's make it happen. Let's save 20% in the budget. Let's save resources. Let's save 3 days time, right? Spend a few weeks writing down what you feel like gives you the most height. So that gives me, I thrive in that particular circumstance right there. When I know where everything's going on and I'm able to finally, okay, let's get started. Now I'm able to make the improvements. I'm able to start making the necessary documents. I'm able to start contributing to the business value. That's when I feel my most high. When I feel my most low is I've had a couple contracts where everything was in disarray. You're going to run into people who have seniority, whether it be because they happen to be just a very likable person, or they happen to have worked at the company for 30, 40 years, which is really unheard of now. But if they've worked the company that long, expect them to be older. So expect them to be a little bit stuck in their ways. There are ways to deal with all of those. But when I'm at my lowest low is when everything is kind of in disarray. As far as business processes and procedures. And then you have a couple stakeholders who kind of don't want to be logical about things. They just kind of want to be a fly in the ointment just to show you the influence and the power that they have. That's when I'm at my lowest low, because I can take criticism, but if there's no logic to it, then I don't understand the necessity of it, because basically what you're telling me is it's pure ego. You just want to feed your own persona. You just want to feed yourself. You don't care who it affects. You don't care that it affects the business, period. You just want to do this because you can. So that's when I'm at my lowest low. So it's important to know your work style, because it's going to help you not only with the interview, speak to those questions that they ask, right? Because they love to ask those questions. When is the time where you dealt with a difficult stakeholder, or what did you love most about your job? It's going to help you answer those questions right there. Second criteria in knowing your work style, she says, if you have trouble trusting your own instincts, ask someone whose judgment you respect. When have you seen me do my best and worst work? And I urge you, this is probably even more important than analyzing yourself. You know how they say it's always easier to give advice than take advice? Well, within that saying, because it's a lot easier to be objective, and especially if you care about somebody or you're just a kind person, it's a lot easier to be objective, but essentially judge someone else from the outside and tell them how to maneuver, than looking within yourself and trying to maneuver within yourself, right? And with the taking advice, it kind of all falls into the same, because when somebody gives you advice, it's almost an ego thing. Like, who are you to judge me, and who are you to see me for how things really are, if they do ring true? Like, and just tell me what I should do. Like, it's that simple, or, you know, taking advice, period. It could be the greatest advice, but if you don't know how to apply it, or if you're not ready to admit some things to yourself, then that advice is largely lost. So I urge you to almost do this one first before you sit down for a few weeks and write down and analyze yourself. I urge you to ask a colleague or even a friend or even a family member. Now, I'm hesitant on a family member because family members knew you for all of your life, right? And family members, they're a double-edged sword. They're the ones who knew you for all of your life. But because they knew you for all your life, sometimes they can only see you as you were instead of as you are right now. They remember that little boy who was running around, bumping into walls, eating crayons and stuff. They don't see that grown man right now who's holding down a job, got a wife and kids, et cetera, et cetera. They only see little Johnny as he was eating glue, right? So with a grain of salt, family members, but your friends you could choose, ask your friends, and especially ask professional colleagues. Listen, in the office, when was the time where, I did some of my best work? When was the time you think I really dropped the ball? Be honest with me. I need this. Okay. And they'll give you good advice. And then the third criteria, she says, in knowing your work style is understand your strengths and weaknesses and be able to discuss them, especially in a job interview. So in knowing your work style, I urge you to ask a colleague, somebody you've worked with or work with currently, ask a friend, ask a family member if that's your only option. Go back, analyze, try to remember those instances that they gave you, and try to analyze, okay, yeah, you know what? I do this wrong. I do this right. And then understand how some of what they said is your strengths and your weaknesses, right? Because you want to be able to speak to those strengths in a job interview. But more importantly, you want to be able to take some of those weaknesses and kind of reverse engineer them around and make them seem like strengths, right? So if you're the type of person who's a social butterfly, you just go to work, you just want to talk, right? It can be a bad thing at times because it could take away from the time that you do your work, but you could take it in, you could look to improve it, and what you could brand it as or what you could communicate it as. I just love to stay on top of things. I love collaborating with people. I always love to be in the know of what's happening now at the company because that helps me do my job. And, it keeps me abreast of everything that's happening, whether it be, we lost the resource or this vendor isn't available or, the project got moved here and there. You could rebrand any weakness into a strength, and that's going to help you stand out in that interview. All right. And then the last thing is in knowing your strengths and weaknesses, you want to divide that between what your skills are and what your temperament is, right? And then divvy that up into what your strengths and weaknesses are under each skills and weaknesses. So your skills, as I said, your skills could very well be communication. You can market that as executive communication. Myself, my skill process improvement, business standardization. Think about what aspect of the job you most enjoy, what you do well. And then your weaknesses as well. If you're not very technical, and they ask a technical question, your response can be, while I haven't been exposed to that in my professional experience, I have had the foresight of reading up on that in my personal experience. And I am interested in adding that to my resume, and that is the aspect of the job I am very much looking forward to. All right, something towards that nature, but understanding what your skills are, what you can really do well, what skills you have, and what skills need to be built upon. Temperament. Now, temperament is just as important as skills, maybe even more so important, in the fact that what your temperament is could largely be improved upon. But to put your best foot forward, you want to try to utilize as much as your natural temperament as possible. If you're just a naturally bubbly person, you want to utilize that. You want to brand yourself as a team player, natural collaborator, almost a leadership style, to where you rejuvenate the work environment, and you could help keep morale high. If you're a naturally analytical person, but a little bit more reserved, you could brand yourself as assertive, professional, very much attention to detail. You care about the quality of the product that you provide. All right. So temperament is important, not only to know in the interview, but just to know for yourself, because you want to know what your natural temperament is so you can understand what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Because a bubbly person is great, but sometimes a bubbly person might not have the most emotional intelligence, and they realize that some situations don't always call for levity. Some situations just are serious and they need to be serious, and they don't necessarily need somebody to help boost morale. Same way, a very analytical, reserved person might be, seen as a little bit of a buzzkill in some situations where they need somebody a little bit more bubbly to add to the environment, and not somebody who just, who's just there kind of seemingly taking up space and just like everybody else. It's a Monday, So it's important to not only know your skills, but your temperament as well going into that interview, and especially just for yourself. So those three things: know your value, know your work style, and understand some of those strengths and weaknesses to be able to discuss them in a job interview. And like I said, to be able to take that and kind of encompass that or embody that as you search for your perfect position at the perfect company for you. All right. I'm going to link the article down below so you can just read a little bit more, but please comment if you got anything valuable from that video, and just let me know how your job search is going. I know every time I speak to a recruiter, or I look to fill out a job on the many job boards, there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants filling out the same job opportunity. So it's not easy. It's hard, but let's keep on the ball, and let's try to utilize the best way that we can to go about doing what we know how to do and what we need to do. All right. I appreciate you guys watching. Take care. Until next time. See you.